In his latest Beltway brief, Blaze Media senior politics editor and D.C. correspondent Chris Bedford wrote about Kamala Harris's recent media blitz and a possible upcoming appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience. But can any of this salvage her dwindling poll numbers? He joins us now to discuss all this. So, Chris, what can you tell us about Kamala's media frenzy, and will this have a big impact on voters?
Well, so far, it hasn't really gone the direction the Democrats want. I mean, last week, basically starting last Friday, or a week from last Friday, she started this media blitz, which is really the first time that she'd been out in public and really been allowed to start going off script, aside from a few very short supported interviews. And the polling that came back showed actually a shift, and they were all away from her. More voters disliked her. And what's interesting about that is the people who are watching The View and the people who a lot of these folks, the audience, people who turn into Stephen Colbert, they're not really undecided people. A lot of them kind of have political points of view. Well, maybe Republicans, a lot of Republican women may have watched The View in the 90s. That has long since shifted, or maybe even during Meghan McCain's time there, that has long since shifted in the last couple of years. It's an extremely liberal show. And still, maybe through a combination of her clips going viral on the internet, her poll numbers started to go in the bad way. Now, it looks to me that they're pretty clearly willing to try anything at this point. They don't want to be a campaign that sticks only to one script, especially when that script is going the wrong direction for them. So now they're reaching out, and this evening she had an interview with Bret Baier, which is not exactly an interview with us or an interview with Tucker Carlson, so you're not going to get the kind of pushback. The Fox News side of things is actually kind of more straight, and they do like that respectability that they get from some of their liberal colleagues. But it's not a firm interview there. And the real thing, though, is a woman who really can't keep conversation for more than a few seconds. Someone who is not very natural and at ease is reportedly pitching the Joe Rogan show, which would be a couple-hour conversation with a kind of a off-the-wall thinker who's going to try and talk to her like a normal person and get her relaxed. And that one shows a desperation that is just so completely opposite from anything that the Harris campaign has been doing before. It shows that their poll numbers are worse than what we're seeing in public.
Yeah, Chris, that's the one that I can't. It just seems like that would be a backbreaker. I mean, it's everything about her that's terrible will be on full display. What are the chances of that actually happening, do you think?
So Joe Rogan's the kind of guy, he doesn't like to interview people who have their own platforms. You see a lot of really interesting scientists and doctors on that show. You see a lot of interesting thinkers. But the interesting thing about it is no matter how plugged into weird ideas you are, you're going to hear names that you've never heard listed with some frequency as the upcoming guest that Joe Rogan has picked for one of the top programs in the country. And that's because he likes to give people a platform who do not have their own. He's pushed back on some people I know, personal friends who had powerful soapboxes. And he says, nah, I'm not really interested in interviewing you, even though you're a very interesting person, because I just don't think that you've got that much new to say that you haven't already said in your own platform. So but he's also seems to be kind of reluctantly taking on his role as a kingmaker. Now, supposedly willing to interview Donald Trump. If he does that, and he's going to want to have to interview Kamala Harris. And a guy like him don't expect hard-hitting stuff. He's not going to try and get the gotcha questions. He's going to try and delve into who you are and what you really believe and what you think. And that's a place that Kamala Harris is really unbelievably weak.
Bedford, let's stick with her. I sent you a post on X earlier today saying with the Dan O'Donnell show, they had an exclusive saying her campaign has dramatically pulled back on local television advertising in the Milwaukee market and reallocating those resources to Philadelphia, where it is believed that the campaign is deeply concerned about turnout and margins there. So what do you make of that?
Well, I think that that's a good decision by them. I mean, when I last toured Milwaukee in 2020, I know the media market is bigger than just the city. There was a surprising number of people who were going to vote Republican than you would normally expect, but it didn't really matter that much. I mean, Minnesota is blue. I mean, Minnesota voted against Ronald Reagan. Minnesota wrote against Richard Nixon. They're one of the very few states out there that's just consistently, maybe it's the Northern European immigration, basically socialists. They're going to back their guy. Pennsylvania, however, which used to be kind of almost a blue state at one point in my life, is now so thoroughly purple and also so thoroughly important to both campaigns. I mean, there really is a very difficult road for either one of them to victory without Pennsylvania, which is a wild thing. And Democrats have pulled out all the stops previously. You've seen Barack Obama going there. You've actually seen him and Hillary Clinton and all the other celebrities going there year after year trying to campaign for Democrats and trying to shift that, not just getting people to not vote for Donald Trump, but getting people to actually care to come out to vote for Kamala Harris. Well, this shows you that the Democrats are doubling down on what is frankly an important state.
Chris, I want to go back to something. I mean, you see more of it today. We've spoken about it before on the show, but that is the leaks and finger pointing behind the scenes on this campaign. It's already looking remarkable to me. I mean, it's probably only going to get worse that these people are talking. I mean, they are talking to the press and pointing fingers at each other.
Well, it's incestuous. They all know each other. And the interesting thing is that reporters give people a lot of power in D.C. If you have access to some of the top reporters and are able to, that means you're able to get your opinions out there. You're able to get your enemies attacked. You're able to get your allies promoted. And oftentimes you're able to do it with some aura of deniability around whether or not you are behind it. So these people really value their relationships with the press. And at the same time, they all know each other. One of the reasons that D.C. is so incredibly swampy and annoying with people just asking you when you meet them out at a restaurant or a bar, what do you do for a living? Kind of like right after your name, sometimes even before it, is because so many people do work in the same industry. And that respectability, that reputation goes everywhere. So when folks are looking around feeling embarrassed, and basically 90%, 95% of D.C. is Democrat. So if you lose to Donald Trump again, you're persona non grata. You've screwed up the country. Your friends in the press don't like you anymore. Your friends in politics think you're a moron. You want to maintain that. You want to show that you're on the right side. And you want to stick your enemies in the back. You want to express your frustration, say, listen, I know there's something wrong here. There's people trying to protect their reputations for afterwards. It's often rats leaving a sinking ship, and it's really poor form.
Chris, we've talked about Donald Trump going to Madison Square Garden. Now a group of Democrats, including Mark Hamill, they've teamed up with the Lincoln Project. No surprise there, honestly. They're all one and the same in my mind. But they're trying to team up and actually sign up to attend the rally so that it makes it look like there's already people in these seats, and just trying to mess with all of that at Madison Square Garden. Do you think any of that is actually going to work?
No, those guys are so incredibly incompetent. I mean, if you go, there's very few people still associated with the Lincoln Project who haven't kind of been pushed out for like kiddie porn or weird things with interns or things like that. These guys are real, even amongst DC politicos, these guys are particularly finger sniffy. And they have all these plans, and they're all about revenge. I mean, if you go to their website, these founders and these top guys, go to their profiles. Their number one thing is we're advertisement makers. Their main anger is that they got cut out of advertisement making. They weren't allowed in on this. Donald Trump didn't pay them. Now they're going to try and ruin things. You have guys like former Luke Skywalker, who's a much better voice actor than he is on screen these days, going out there trying to act like he's still able to move people. It's sad. And at the end of the day, those seats are going to get pretty packed out.
It's sad. And you know what? I think people in our audience are sad that your cat didn't make an appearance on their show today. I think that was the biggest response that we've gotten. So many people reached out to me about your cat yesterday on the show.
He's a hero, and he's really upset with me right now. He's watching me from the window. It's like, it's cold out here.
Yeah, as he should be outside. Thanks so much, Bedford.